What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my unit review and builds guide for Ascended Eir, Gregor, Ricken and Phila. So Ascended Eir is a very strong green dagger cavalier this time, and she's got Ymir Everliving as her preferred weapon. This weapon gives her minus on special cooldown, and this is always going to be active in the player phase or in the enemy phase if the opponent is ranged. So she can get +5 to all of her stats, and then she can get extra attack in combat depending on 40% of the current HP of the ally with the second lowest HP at start of the combat. So it pretty much means that you need the second lowest HP on your team to be 50 if you want to get the full 20 attack buff from this kind of effect. And it's honestly pretty easy to get. It's just that it sounds complicated, but she's going to be getting a ton of attack out of this, and that's one of the reasons why she hits so hard as she does, and she can function really well as a nuke. She also has half null follow-up built into it, which allows her to bypass any kind of follow-up negation effects, and that is again really helpful for a nuke. And then finally, if she's above 25% HP, then she can get the miracle effect. So this miracle is kind of like Brave Seliph, but she's not going to be as potent a miracle abuser like Brave Seliph because she only has half null follow-up, so she's going to get doubled quite a lot even by the auto follow weapons. And even then, like, she is going to be functioning as a pretty solid unit in many of the game modes, as you'll see. And her damage output is surprisingly really amazing, and you'll see what she can do later on. She also has base 42 attack, which is really good for nuking, and on top of that she also has a super boon, and base 45 speed is going to be allowing her to double a lot of the opponents, and with her resistance and mystic boost she can definitely take on some of the dragons. But her HP is not going to be that high, which kind of helps, I guess, in terms of looping the miracle with using Mystic Boost 4. So she just got Mystic Boost 4 as a new skill. So this skill is a bit of an upgrade, so it does inflict -5 attack on foot during the combat. Not only it disables Wrathful Staff like it did before, but it now also disables Dazzling Staff. And of course it used to disable adaptive damage, so that way she can definitely face dragons. And then finally the healing of Mystic Boost 4 has been increased, so now you can heal up 10 HP after the combat. So Mystic Boost 4 is going to be a pretty good skill for Ascended Eir's playstyle because she's going to be able to loop her miracle, and this is also really good for taking on dragons. And she of course has Sparkling Boost from non-remix Eir, and this is also a pretty nice support skill so that you can keep the HP of your allies high, and again that is going to be helping you get extra attack. And it's definitely not that hard to reach 50 HP with the second lowest HP on your team because you can easily just use the weapon refines, use the HP sacred seals, or even use the mythic or legendary buffs to make that happen, and that way she's going to be hitting really hard. And because of the miracle, she's going to be able to survive against a lot of the units, but keep in mind that if they have any kind of auto follow-up attack, then they are certainly going to be able to kill her, so you always have to keep that in mind. But the miracle is going to be helping her become a pretty good Wings of Mercy beacon, and it can also help her safely survive against many encounters and then just damage them really heavily with this kind of base attack and this kind of weapon, which can give her so much extra attack. Ascended Eir is definitely going to be seeing usage in Aether Raids offense, in Aether Raids defense, and also in Summoner Duels. And she's going to be pretty good against a lot of the common blue far-safe tanks like Ascended Idun and Brave Hector. So not only the green color helps you, but the fact that she hits so hard is also really nice for just killing those far-safe armors. And if you want to fodder her for Mystic Boost 4, then it is a rather niche skill, I would say. It is not the best here for slot B skill that we have gotten, and I think we are probably going to be getting a lot better ones in the future, so it is only really going to be helpful on a couple of units. And the best users of Mystic Boost Sacred Seal are going to be units with Miracle like Brave Seliph and Ascended Celica. So Brave Seliph actually, especially if you do not exceed 44 HP, he can just run this in his slot B, and the -5 attack debuff is really going to be helping him not take that much damage and prevent from getting, hit to 1 HP and then getting killed by maybe some kind of brave weapon. And this pretty much opens up your Sacred Seal to run attack speed solo 3. Now obviously you're going to be missing out on loud speed defense, but I think a lot of people really underestimate this Mystic Boost 4 build because it can actually checkmate a lot of teams that have slower units, because you cannot auto follow up Seliph through his null follow up, and if you don't have some kind of AoE damage, then he's just going to be able to heal up the HP and chip down your units. So even if you have very strong tanks, he can just live if you don't have the right units to kill him. So in that case, he can work out in Summoner Duels S, but again the trade-off is going to be with lot speed defense. But I do like this build, and it is definitely going to be helpful against certain matchups. It is a strong build, but I wouldn't really say that it is the best build. So don't go out of your way to pull for Mystic Boost 4 just for Brave Seliph, even if you're a big Seliph fan. And he can definitely function with a lot of the other slot B skills as well, and just with his default lot speed defense as well. Now, Ascended Celica is a pretty interesting case because she recently got access to attack speed finish 4, and that gives you 7 HP healing in combat, and then you get 10 HP healing out of Mystic Boost out of the combat. So essentially you're able to get 17 healing, and this means that even if you run her at max investment with like 3 mythics, she can still loop her miracle, which is extremely good, and this is going to be a really fun build. So as it is, this kind of Celica does want null counter disrupt, and you kind of get that being able to disable that dazzling staff of the staff units. So that's why running Mystic Boost 4 in the slot B is a lot better, and then you can run null follow up. And this is something that you could use in Aether Raids Chaos or even in Aether Raids Offense. And Ascended Celica is just a very versatile unit who can be really fun. Now, flyers don't really have the best access to skills, and if you're running Spring Maria like this in something like Summoner Duels, then Mystic Boost 4 could be helpful because you can get that -5 attack debuff on them, and you can also disable the adaptive damage, so that could actually help you against some of the weapons. For example, against Duo Nina's weapon, and that is also really helpful for just healing up the HP. And Pastel Polax already has got the healing, so she can just be really annoying with this kind of build, especially at high investment. And Mystic Boost 4 is really not recommended on like infantry melee units because they can just run the Bulwark skill instead and get the obstruct effect and also get the 2 debuffs. And because this is a 300 SP sloppy skill, you can also run this on your arena units just so that they can score higher. So for example, if you run this on Brave Claude, who already does not have many options, then he is going to be able to score like a 185 BST unit. Not the highest, but still, it could be nice to get mileage out of your favorites and still use them in arena. And because we're going to be investing so much with the 300 SP passives, you can actually run a lower, SP Sacred Seal like Eye of Shield, which is going to be helping him a lot against, many of the archers in arena. If you want to build up Eir on a budget, then there's really not much you have to change. You can just give her reposition and have attack speed solo. Draconic Aura actually works out pretty well for her because she can get a lot of attack, and this does become a 2 cooldown special. Now, because she's an Ascended unit, keep in mind that you can ascend an asset for free on these kinds of units. So you can just ascend her speed, and if you got her with plus speed IV, then you can just ascend her attack. So definitely do not forget to get your free Ascended asset. And if you want to invest a bit more into her, then Windsweep could be run. So she does have the partial non-follow-up in her weapon, which can allow her to run Windsweep, and that can be even more annoying with the miracle that she has got. So she's not going to be able to heal up, but still this can be an option if you want to run something else in her slot B. But I still like Mystic Boost 4 on her, and you can also use her in Summoner Duels with Lethality and Heavy Blade. So because she can get so much attack, she's actually not that bad user of Heavy Blade. Usually Heavy Blade is not really used on a lot of range units because they are going to be missing out on the attack checks, but that is not the case with Eir, especially when you run Mystic Boost 4, which does give you the attack debuff on the enemy. And in Summoner Duels, she can easily tank a lot of the dragons like Ascended Eir if they're running some kind of distant counter dragon Sacred Seal. And you can also pulse down by living their attack. So that is going to be really helpful to just pulse down the AoE specials or the pre-charge specials of the opponents. So Pulse Smoke is always useful in Summoner Duels. And Heavy Blade and Lethality is a pretty good combo even outside of Summoner Duels. Now she's going to be an amazing unit in Aether Raids Offense as well, because you can actually use her to just set up Wings of Mercy. Now a lot of times many ranged initiators are not going to be doing that well against a lot of the far safe units, but that is not the case with Eir. As you can see here, this is a +10 Brave Hector and Ascended Eir with pre-charge Aegis, and Ascended Eir at +1 mer just smashes them. So with Asker, you're going to be able to pre-charge Moonbow, and that is really helpful because if you face Brave Hector, then you're going to be able to trigger Moonbow twice. They are going to be able to survive if they do not run Sacred Cowl or they do not run any kind of distant counter, But in that case, before their Hardy Fighter is even pre-charged with their defensive special, you can just attack on turn 1 itself. And that is going to be a bit annoying, I guess, because you will have to use a Dancer to make her fall into the Wings of Mercy range after 2 combats, but many times you can just attack into enemies and just fall into the Wings of Mercy range because of the miracle that she's got in her weapon. And Asker's Resonant Shields is actually pretty good because she is going to be missing out on the follow-up negation in a sense and the other half of the null follow-up. So Asker is going to be an amazing support unit with Eir, and you can just run Disarm Trap and make her as a Fury Initiator. So with the double Fury build, she takes 14 damage per combat, and in 2 combats she's going to be falling into the Wings of Mercy range of her Gale Force allies, so it can definitely be a pretty nice way of setting up Gale Force, even smashing against like many of these common plus and far save tanks, as you can see, because the attack that Eir can get is pretty ridiculous, and it's not that hard to get 50 HP on one of your allies. If you don't want to use her that aggressively, then you can also use her in the Aster season as a Miracle Loop unit. So just like Ascended Celica, she can do the similar thing, and because she's missing out on the half null follow-up, you can just run Attack Smoke 4. And when you're going to be running the Mythic boost, she will need some extra healing to get back into her Miracle range, so that's why Noontime is going to be helping you. And because she's going to be having such a high attack stat, even without specials, she can easily take out units, and you can just run her with a near save ally, and that is going to be able to work out. So if you have seen Ascended Celica put in the work, Ascended Eir can pretty much do the same thing, except for not having the access to the infantry skills. And in Aether Raids Chaos, you can also Vantage with Ascended Eir by running Speed Preempt, and you can support her with Muspel so that you can get even more true damage. And because Eir can get so much damage output, she can easily one-shot units in the Chaos season when they're not getting any kind of mythic buffs. So it's a lot easier to Vantage in Chaos season for that reason. And you can also invest a bit heavily into her with attack speed unity, and also with the preempt skill, of course, which is extremely expensive. And you can run Noontime so that she can get back into her miracle range essentially if she is going to be failing to kill someone and if they put her in her miracle range. And you can also use it in Aether Raids defense, and I think that's pretty much one of the better places to use Eir, because in a Brattlecatcher team she can just quad attack, and her miracle is going to be making it really annoying. And she can also run Love Speed defense to really hit very hard, and again, it's not that hard to reach 50 HP with the second lowest HP ally even on Aether Raids defense with all of the mythic buffs. You can also run the budget Ascended Eir in Aether Raids defense, but if you want to hyper optimize, then Blue Feud is something that you can run, which is going to be helping you against Brave Hectors, Ascended Eduns, and of course Brave Dimitris. So this is something that you could definitely use in Aether Raids defense in the Dark season, in the Anima season, and also in the Chaos season. With Brattlecatcher, she's of course able to quad attack, but even without Brattlecatcher, she's going to be still a very solid Aether Raids defense unit. And finally, if you do invest into her heavily, then she could be run in Arena with G-Dual Cavalry 4, and because of the 300 SP slot B skill, she's going to be able to score like a 185 BST unit, and Sparkling Boost is an amazing support there for Eir, and that can really help you just restore the HP to your allies, which is not that easy to do in Arena. And you could also run Neotrace skill on her, but I really feel like Mystic Boost is a lot better. And if when you're not running Mystic Boost, there are just other skills that you can run for that specific role or for that specific game mode, as you can see. Gregor is a sword infantry unit with Blade of Favors, and this weapon gives him -1 special cooldown, and it's a really unique weapon because it's the first weapon in the game that triggers both in player phase and in the enemy phase. So at sort of both player phase and enemy phase, in the 3-row and 3-column range, he's able to inflict -6 attack speed and defense debuff on all of those foes, and he gets +6 attack speed and defense buff to himself. So this makes him a pretty good user of the secondary effect of his weapon, and also for using bonus doubler Sacred Seal. And he can function as a pretty good long range support unit because even if he's not going to be engaging into the combat, that's a pretty huge range for a lot of debuffs for free. And if you're going to be doubling down on the debuffs and running him with other units who do appreciate debuffs as well, then he can function as a pretty good support unit there. And the secondary part of his weapon does require him to initiate combat in the player phase or be within 2 spaces of an ally. And if that condition is met, then he's able to get the Pelagian or Vulture effect, which essentially doubles down on the penalties, and he can get even more debuffs on the opponent during the combat, depending on the visible debuffs that they've got. By now, most people are familiar with the Pelagian and Vulture weapons and how they function, as we have got so many weapon refines with them. And finally, he can also get 40% damage reduction on foe's first attack, and that is pretty good for, just getting a bit more bulky without really relying on the speed check to get that damage reduction. Because Gregor's speed is not the highest by the modern standards. It's still pretty good at base 37, but he does have really impressive attack at base 44 and also has really good defense at base 43. His attack super boon is of course going to be helpful, but most of the time people are going to be opting to run plus speed IV on him so that he can make use of the damage reduction skills or null follow up or just double a lot better with this kind of weapon. And he also comes with a new skill in Solid Ground 4 and also has infantry null follow up. So he can again function as a pretty good support unit with his Slotsy and his weapon alone. And Solid Ground does not really do anything for him. I guess they just wanted to release this new skill, so they just put this on him. It is basically a defense counterpart of Still Water, so it gives you +7 visible attack and defense and inflicts -7 resistance on you as the penalty. So overall, Gregor is going to be able to function as a pretty nice support unit and also a debuffing tank with this kind of weapon. Of course, do watch out for the unity skills like attack speed unity and attack defense unity because they're going to be able to get the extra stats. There are also many debuff neutralization units and debuff neutralization skills like Slick Fighter, for example. So it is going to be a bit annoying against that, and that is something that can stop Gregor despite his high attack stats. So that's definitely something you have to watch out for. Overall, he's a decent unit if you're a fan of him, and this kind of weapon is definitely pretty helpful. And if you want to fodder him for Solid Ground 4, then here are some of the uses of it. The main use of this is going to be on Aether Raids defense for being an anti-Mila dancer, and you actually get 1 extra defense out of the skill compared to Fortress Defense Res 3. So it could be run here so that he can be a lot more anti-Mila, and you can just run Fortress Defense as the Sacred Seal as well. You can also run this on Mila herself, but you're going to be losing out on some resistance, which might not be the best thing if you're trying to run the Sabotage skill on her. So a lot of dancers can use this, and units who want the visible defense check can also use this. For example, Wyvern Flight is a pretty finicky skill to work with, so if you want to use this, then here's a sample build. So Solid Ground is going to be really helpful so that you can get that visible defense and make use out of the Wyvern Flight skill. And this could also be used on units who generally have high attack and high defense and don't really mind like reducing their resistance. And they can also run AoE specials. So Flame Muspel is definitely a pretty good example of it, and he can pre-charge his AoE special quite easily because he does have Time Pulse built into his weapon, and then you can just give him Cook and Pulse Sacred Seal, and then you can also support him with Asker or Duochrome, and he will have a pre-charge special and hit really hard with his high attack stat. So Solid Ground is something that you could run on him over Life and Death 4 for getting that extra visible attack. And this way you can also get extra visible defense, which is always nice for tanking any kind of threats after you just do the massive AoE damage. Infantry Null Follow-Up is a pretty nice support skill as well, and it could be given to infantry dancers, infantry support units like Brave Lucina for example, or Rave. So those units can definitely make use of this and run this in their Slotsy to support their units, and this could also be a pretty good thing to be put on like your Aether Raids defense team so that you can free up the Null Follow-Up Sacred Seal from many of your units or Null Follow-Up Sloppy skill, and that is always going to be helpful. One thing which you have to keep in mind is that the Null Follow-Up you get out of the skill is speed based, and the Null Follow-Up you get out of the Sacred Seal is not speed based, so it is a lot more flexible to run that Sacred Seal, but if you're a fast unit then you can definitely make use out of the skill. If you want to run Gregor on a budget, then you can simply give him Guard, and this is actually going to be helping him on a budget because he is going to be pretty tanky with all of those debuffs and the visible buff that he can get. And you can just run Null Follow-Up so that he can actually double some of the follow-up negation units, because even though Gregor might not seem as fast on surface level, with the Pelagian effect and with his weapon he's definitely able to get a lot faster, so you can definitely use that to your advantage. And you can also run Gregor with Null Follow-Up in his lobby skill and then run Bonus Doubler. And because of the visible buffs that he gets, Bonus Doubler has really good synergy, and Attack Speed Ideal also has very good synergy. If possible, I would definitely recommend Plus Speed IV again because he is not the fastest, so trying to stack up speed on him is going to be helping him like any other sword infantry unit, and he already has really high attack stat as you can see. You can also run him with Sword Sparrow, mainly if you want to use him in the player phase, and velocity or a tempo skill is going to be good for slot B so that you can get that null guard effect and just trigger your special no matter what. And panic smoke could also be a good skill on him because he does have the Plagian and the Vulture effect in his weapon, so more debuffs are always nice. And the panic debuffs and the debuffs that he does with his weapons are going to be stacking up, so you can actually get a lot more debuffs on the opponent visibly and then make use out of it from his Plagian effect. Surge Sparrow is going to be healing you up as well, but it is definitely going to be an expensive skill. But I guess if you have extra Goddesses, then you could fodder him to Gregor for this kind of player face build. And if you want to use him in Summoner Duels, then he could definitely function as a frontliner, especially in Summoner Duels S. And you can just stack up defense on him with steady posture, speed defense bulwark, and also bonus doubler that you can already get. And the reason why he can work as a frontliner is because of the debuffs that he can get on the enemy. So the stat swing that he can do with the Plagian effect in his weapon and the bonus doubler, Sacred Seal, is actually pretty amazing, and the guard effect is going to be really helpful along with the healing that he can get out of the bulwark skill. You can actually run Time Pulse if you want to pre-charge Escutcheon, and this is just going to be helping him frontline better against many of the insane nukes like Brave Salif. So running Escutcheon is really helpful here instead of running a damaging special, and you can even pre-charge it with Duo Chrom or Asker if you want to. And you can also give him external null follow-up from some other unit like Legendary Male Pilot for example, or just Brave Chrom. So he can work as a frontliner because of his high defense, and even though he's not the fastest, he can still stack up the speed and have a lot of defensive effects going on for him. And he can also support your team with the debuffs on the enemies. So by being on the front line, he's going to be debuffing a lot of the enemies, and he can just double down on that by running the units who can also appreciate the debuffs and make productive use out of it. If you're a big Gregor fan, then I would say that this is pretty much his optimal build because you can get the null guard effect out of velocity, the damage reduction, and you can also get the finish kill so that you can get the healing and the extra true damage. So he's going to be hitting extremely hard with this, and you can run Time Pulse and Vital Astra and pre-charge it, so you can get a lot of damage reduction, pretty much 75% damage reduction on foe's first attack with this kind of build. And Null Follow-Up Sacred Seal is going to be patching up the hole in this build essentially, so Null Follow-Up is really important for a fast sword infantry unit. And if you can provide him externally, then you can of course run something else like bonus doubler here to just get even more stats. And then finally, if you want to use him in arena, then you can actually use him with Distant Pressure and Mystic Boost 4. And by running 300 speed passives, you're going to be able to score like 195 BST unit. And he can actually make use of this because he can get Null Follow-Up out of the Sacred Seal. And he can also offset the chip damage that you get out of Distant Pressure with the Mystic Boost. And because of the 40% damage reduction that he gets out of his weapon, there's not immediate need of running some kind of damage reduction skill. So oftentimes he can tank units with his damage reduction in his weapon and the debuffs that he can get, and then he can just kill them back with Vital Astra. You can also run some other skill, but honestly Vital Astra is pretty good here because we're going to be debuffing the attack of the opponent quite a lot. So that's why I do like it a bit more on max invested Gregor. And it's a pretty good skill if you can also have it pre-charged, as it will just give you more damage reduction. Ricken is the instant demote of this patch, and that means that it's going to be miserably hard to get the copies of him, but if you do end up plus and merging him, then he can actually function as a pretty nice demote unit, not because of his base kit or anything like that, but because of his base stats. So he has got insanely high base attack at 43 and also pretty good base speed at 39, which is workable, and both of these do have super boon. So at max investment he can function really well, and whenever we get a good arcane green tome, he's going to be able to function really well out of the demote pool and as a free to play unit. It's just that getting the copies of him is definitely going to be pretty annoying. So he comes with the Grand Rabbit tome, which is really outdated at this point honestly, because it only works in the first combat of the player phase or enemy phase, and it does give you +5 attack and resistance in combat, and also heals up 7 HP after it. So not the best weapon. It could be used on budget, but there are just better green tomes that you can replace this with, and hopefully in future some kind of arcane tome. And he does have attack speed form 3, which is actually not that bad of a budget skill that he can run on many units, and he can just double down on this by running the form Sacred Seals as well. And he also has spur attack speed at 4-star. Ricken can definitely be compared to the other fast green infantry mage that we have, and that is going to be Luthier. And Ricken just pretty much dunks on Luthier by having 5 extra attack and 2 extra speed. Luthier is going to be a lot more bulky, but I just find it really hilarious and also sad at the same time, because Luthier's whole thing is that he's not naturally blessed when it comes to magic, and he has to work really hard, unlike his sister. And here we have a young character completely dunking on him like Ricken, with having this much attack stat over him. And the fact that he doesn't need a dual skill in arena to score as a 180 BST unit. So if you're lucky enough to get a copy of Ricken, then you can just run a budget build on him with speed resistance link. And you can also run the Form Sacred Seal on him. So on budget, you definitely want to have extra speed on him, and you can also speed refine the weapon, because this weapon does absolutely nothing for the speed, and Glimmer can be something that you can run on him, and it's going to be one of the best specials on him because of his high attack stat. And if you're going to be investing heavily into him, then you can run him as an AoE unit, and this could help you in the PvE with like 3 dancers, and you can pretty much clear like most content with this. So you can run Madness Flask, which does give you extra attack in form of visible attack stat, and it also, you know, it pretty much has Fury built into it. So the chip damage can pretty much help you fall into the Wings of Mercy range of your dancers, and this could help you just clear out the chain challenges. And because of his extremely high attack stat, he can make use of the AoE specials really well, and visible attack stat does matter for these AoE specials, so that's why you want to run Life and Death 4. And you can just run Special Spiral and Flashing Blade Sacred Seal so that you can loop your special. And you can also run him as a player phase unit with Wind Sweep and Null Follow Up. So that is something you can now do because of the Null Follow Up Sacred Seal. So you can get attack speed ideal 4 from the Divine Codes, and it's just going to be pretty easy to maintain the HP condition, especially when you're running Wind Sweep. And Grand Fox is mainly a player phase tome, but it's like one of the few tomes which actually gives you the speed when it comes to inhittable tomes. So it could be run for the player phase build, and Ricken already has pretty high attack stat, so extra speed is always nice with a Wind Sweep build, which you can get out of the Fox tome. Now there are definitely other green tomes which are, you know, kind of premium, like the Ron Vulture tome, which is locked to a 5-star unit, but if you have extra Arthur, then you could definitely give this to him. And you can also run the attack resistance menace so that you can, you know, hit even harder with Ricken. And attack speed finish is something that you could run on him. And even though like the solo condition is present on the Vulture tome, the proximity condition of the finish kill is pretty lenient, so you can just be within 3 spaces of an ally, still get the solo effect from the Vulture tome and the Sacred Seal, and do a ton of damage and also heal up HP, and also do the true damage out of the Glimmer whenever you trigger it. And Null Follow Up Sacred Seal is going to be a pretty good option because mages do not have too many options that they could run on their slot B, and instead of running Null Follow Up in a Sacred Seal, you could just run this in slot B so that it can stack up even more stats on him. And you can also run bonus doubler on him if you run a attack speed unity, attack speed oath build, and this is definitely something that you could run. And I kind of like this a lot more than the Vulture tome because you can make use of the Oath 4 skill with this weapon now. Snow Globe Plus from Winter Arthur does have the attack resistance unity built into it. It also means that you're going to be trading off on foddering him for the far save. But hey, if you're a big Ricken fan, then this is something you can do and just double down on the attack unity part and then get the speed unity out of the slot A skill. And yeah, Null Follow Up in slot B along with bonus doubler is going to be making him quite offensive. And if he faces any kind of attack debuff, then oh boy, he's going to be hitting really hard. So he doesn't really care about the offensive debuffs with this kind of build. You can also run him with one of the weapons, which is I guess a bit easier to get than these 2 weapons before. So MIT Blooms Plus is present on 4-star Valentine Alphonse, and he is the 4-star focus unit of the Valentine banner. So with MIT Blooms Plus, you can get the attack debuff and also get the in combat healing, and you can stack this up with the finish healing, and you can just heal up a lot of HP. And Speed Smoke 4 is something that you can run at max investment so that you can function with the damage reduction, and the healing is going to be pretty much functioning as a self-sustain. So you can get the 11 HP healing out of this build and also get the damage reduction, and you have Null Follow Up, the standard stuff for any kind of fast unit really. And if you plus and merge him, then you could definitely use him in arena, and he doesn't really need a dual skill to reach 180 BST, which is of course really good, but unfortunately doesn't have a preferred weapon, so he cannot really hit 185 BST by running a 300 SP passive like Gregor for example. So you can just run the Vulture Tome here, and Menace is going to be giving you a good burst amount of damage output, and you can run attack speed ideal 4 as his slot A skill. And because of his high attack stat, he can always be used in a Brattle Catcher team because he can get the brave hits, and he can also get the quad attacks, so you could run him with Wind Sweep and Null Follow Up and be really annoying to a lot of Brave Hectors and Ascended Eir with that blue feud. And Madness Flask's like chip damage is not a problem when you run him with Medius and his Unguard. And you can also use him with Snow Globe and a Tempo skill. And with Brattle Catria and Tempo skill, you can just trigger Glimmer on your Brave hit, and that is going to be doing a lot of damage. So attack speed unity is always good on Aether Raids defense because Eirs do run Temari Dagger and people do run Sabotage skills. So when you're using attack speed finish on him, you can just use Snow Globe so that you can at least not care about the attack debuff if that happens. And the finish skill is going to be giving you that +5 true damage when your special triggers. And the finish skill is going to be giving you that true damage, which is definitely pretty nice when you're going to be hitting this hard with a Brave effect of Brattle Catria. The final unit of this banner is going to be Phila, and she is the 4-star focus unit of this banner and also the demote. So a lot of people might be building her up as a merge project because she's a Gen 7 Lance Flyer, which means that she can actually reach 185 BST after the first merge. So she could be useful in Arena, and Arena is generally a flyer favored mode, so she could work as a free-to-play option there for scoring, and she doesn't really have the worst stats. She does have base 42 speed, which is really good, and she does have Super Boon in it as well. And 37 base attack is quite workable, and the high resistance that she has means that she can make use of Pegasus Flight and Flow Feather if you wanna, invest a bit more heavily into her. So it does open up the options for her. She doesn't have the highest defense, which is going to be annoying for the melee matchups. But yeah, not a lot of units can make use of Pegasus Flight as well as Phila can do, obviously, and that's why she comes with that. And it is a 5-star skill, and she could definitely be compared to the last gen Lance Flyers like Karen and Marcia. And as you can see, the Karen still has that edge offensively a bit with that extra 2 attack and then extra speed, and she also has extra HP over Phila. It's just that her resistance is severely lacking here, but that's not the biggest deal, I guess, if you like her a lot. And then Phila is basically Marcia with more resistance and less defense. And you can also compare this to a lot older Lance Flyers as well, like Dihorba and Sigrun. And these are going to be getting their weapon refines. For Sigrun at least, it's going to be in a couple of months, but Dihorba has to wait like almost 2 years to get her weapon refined, and until then, Phila is pretty much going to be outclassing her in all of these stats except for HP. And the extra resistance does mean that she can run Pegasus Flight better than Dihorba, which is something that she was known to do. If you want to fodder off Pegasus Flight, then you could definitely do that to some of your favorite flyers like Sida, Claire, and Florina, for example. These are fan favorite units, and they can definitely make good use out of the Pegasus Flight with the different builds, as you can see. So I'm really glad that the flight skills are finally getting into the demote pool, because these skills do not deserve to be in the 5-star lock pool, because it takes the visible speed check, it takes the visible resistance check, and then it gives you attack and defense debuff. So there's just so many factors for working with these skills that not a lot of units can make good use out of the Pegasus Flight skill or even the Wyvern Flight skill. Now let's move on to building up Phila. So if you just want to run her on a budget, then Fury 3 is much better because it does increase your visible resistance, which means that Pegasus Flight is a bit better. And you can just speed refine her Rain Lance, which does have speed defense rain essentially built into it. And the thing with Rain Lance is that it can always be paired up with attack speed rain and could be used as a safe support for like in-game content or even for Aether Raids offense, honestly. So speed debuff is actually pretty nice from Rain Lance, and you could also do the similar thing with allied Lance, I guess, but it doesn't really give you the speed. So the idea is to basically have Phila in front of the team and then having near save and far save armor units, so whenever they cover her, they're actually going to be able to make use of the debuffs that she does with her Rain Lance and also attack speed rain. So it could be useful if you're running some kind of fast save units like Rearmed Grima or like Valentine Lucina, so it can always help you with the speed debuff. And she can also run like Sabotage Attack to just double down on her support. So this doesn't really need any kind of merges, and if you really like Phila a lot, then this is one of the ways of using her on a budget for Aether Raids offense, just as a safe support. Now keep in mind, there are just so many different safe support units which are going to be much better than her, but still I just wanted to go over this option because it's not often like we get the speed support out of many of these support weapons. So it could be nice with the fast save units, especially because we have crazy fast threats like Brave Seliph now. And if you want to run her with Rain Lance as an offensive build, then you can just double down on it and run speed defense rain as well, and run a pretty standard build with attack speed catch. If you want to specialize her usage with Pegasus Flight, then you can actually run an enemy phase build with Distant Dart and Speed Smoke 4. And she doesn't have access to full null follow-up, but Piercing Tribute at least gives you half null follow-up, which can stop the annoying auto follow-up enemies. So this can be really good, but you're still going to be getting your follow-up attack stopped by the follow-up negation skills, so it could be a bit annoying. But still, Piercing Tribute is a pretty good weapon, which does give you extra speed for the damage reduction. And again, that kind of lance is rare. We have most lances giving attack and defense, so Piercing Tribute from Valentine Owain is definitely a pretty nice option on her if you want to specialize in Pegasus Flight usage and just wanting to tank with that and the debuffs that you get out of it. And then you can also stack up damage reduction from Speed Smoke 4. You can also use it with Springy Lance for a more player phase build, and Flow Feather is basically like a player phase Pegasus Flight. I mean, almost. It does give you the true damage and also the flat damage reduction, so it could be useful, and then you can heal up the HP with Surge Sparrow and Moonbow. So for a player phase build, this is something that you could do. But Pegasus Flight is functional in both phases, and Flow Feather is only there for the player phase, but still she can make pretty good use out of this because of her resistance. And then Springy Lance can just give you the extra speed and also the debuff neutralization to your attack and speed. You can also run Piercing Tribute and run her with the Clash Kill, so this is definitely pretty expensive, and Clash Kills actually do work with the Oath 4 skills and the teleportation because the game does count the spaces moved when you even jump with the Oath 4 skills. So this is not really possible for the flying units that easily, but they can definitely jump spaces and make use out of the Clash skill and get the attack and speed debuff neutralization out of it, and also get a lot of attack and speed as well in the process. And you can easily run this with the Neotray skill because even after teleporting, you're going to be able to get at least one Canto, so that at least is something. So Clash skill is definitely something you could run, and if you run it with Harmonic Azura or Legendary Azura, then this is of course a pretty good option as well. But in itself, with the Oath 4 skill, the Clash skill do have good synergy on these flying units. I did showcase a build with Distant Dart here, and if you just wanna take on the melee units, then you can also specialize for Pegasus Flight by running attack speed unity, stacking up a bit more speed. And Candy Cane Plus is also an interesting weapon because it does give you the guard effect, so it is pretty nice here, and it does give her extra defense as well, which is something that she's lacking. And you can also get attack smoke 4 so that you can have the follow-up negation effect so that you do not get doubled by the auto follow-up unit. So we're not running Piercing Tribute here. If you don't have that, then Candy Cane Plus is also an option from Winterhilda, and a build like this is also possible. You can also use it on Aether Raids offense as a Gale Force unit because its Curdance Plus is one of the best weapons for Gale Forcing, and you can easily run this in the Astro Season with Thor and get the special acceleration out of the War Breaker. It's much better to do that than running Heavy Blade on her, and with Quicken Pulse and its Curdance, Gale Force becomes a 2 cooldown special. So it's pretty much a one-tap Gale Force, and you can just hit once and trigger that with War Breakers, so it can definitely be pretty helpful. And finally, if you do run her for the arena purpose for scoring, then Unbound Lance Plus does become a pretty nice option, which does have the solo lull attack defense built into it, and that is something that flying units do not have naturally access to. So it could be run with a build like this, and you can just run the standard offensive build, and flyer units do have pretty good time there, especially if you have a dancer for arena usage. Then you're going to be getting a lot of mileage out of the flying mobility of Phila, and also the fact that she can score as a 185 BST unit, which no other Lance Flyer in the free-to-play pool could do before. So this is pretty much last gen scoring which Yenfei could do, so she can just score as much as Yenfei without spending any kind of grails, and the flyer mobility is really nice. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're building up any of these units. I went over a lot of options and even the fodder options, and if you enjoyed, then please be sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member down below. And for more FEH videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Luthier after seeing Ricken. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.